So Tony, thanks again for agreeing to share your online class experience with me. What I'd like to do to get started is just talk about two things that I think are pretty interesting to, any advisor that does classes is what was your comfort level or comfortability with transitioning to an online class? And then second, what kind of things did you do to drive attendee engagement?
Great. Yeah, no, happy to be on the call with you, Matt. Been working with FMT for over 10 years, so it's been a great journey. My comfort level, quite frankly, didn't matter because of COVID onset. I've been teaching the classes for 10 years, and I teach it at a community college, so it's sponsored there, and they were interested in doing a summer class. So the opportunity arose, and I wanted to do it. So I've been kind of focusing more on a digital presence a little bit. So we've been taking some small strides there. So I thought it was a great opportunity to jump in and just take advantage of the opportunity at hand. So yeah, that's kind of how I went about doing the classes. Did some classes in the summer of 2020.
That's great. And was there anything that you did either differently or just you tried to do a little slightly differently that was different than in the face-to-face environment or the venue environment?
Yeah, so that's a good question. There were a couple of things that I did. So number one was to focus on some of those fundamentals that I learned, when I first started with FMT, and that's using stories, making the information relatable, to the attendees, to not just read the slides, right? So those things are like super important, especially when you're on a video conference, basically. So it's easier to, get people engaged when you're in person, but you do have to make sure that you're following those fundamentals of not just reading the slides, like I mentioned, using good examples to illustrate the information and make it relevant to them. So that was one thing that I did. The other thing that I did was I tried to consolidate the class. So obviously when I teach retirement planning today in person, that was, a 3-hour session, right? And there's 2 of those. So it's a total of 6 hours. So what I was able to do was to consolidate some of the information. During the summer classes that I did, I was able to do the first evening in about 2 hours and 10 minutes. And the second was about 2 hours and 15 minutes. So, I did preemptively, kind of setting that stage, right, of what the attendee should expect. So I told them that, hey, this is my first time teaching this virtually. I've been doing it for 10 years. I think it's going to take about 10 hours. It might take a little bit more, might take a little bit less. And they were okay with it because I believe that I gave them some really, really good content and education. So, I think that's something that's helpful to think about too. A reminder for advisors is, these folks might have a life-changing event, the decision to retire. So if that decision is on their horizon, they're going to pay attention. It might feel differently from the instructor's side, but they're still nonetheless engaged. You just might not see it, but you kind of do see it when they schedule an appointment, though. So that was kind of a different thing for me. So again, I had those 2 focuses. Just setting the stage with them, focusing on the fundamentals I've already learned, trying to make it shorter, just being clear that, hey, this is something new. And, thankfully at the end of it, we had a couple of really high quality attendees and great people that were a great fit reach out to us to, schedule an appointment.
That's great. So how many people, either attendees or buying units, did attended the class?
Yeah, so I was, pleasantly surprised. I did this class. It was the end of June, and it was just It was just 2 days. So it wasn't 2 sessions. It was just one session for 2 days. And I actually had to reschedule the second session because I had a immediate family member. My mother passed away. So we had her funeral, but everyone
Sorry to hear that.
Thank you.
Really sorry to hear that.
Thanks. So we rescheduled the second session. Everyone was there for it. But we had 12 units, which for the summertime at the end of June, I think is really good. So I typically do classes. I don't typically do classes in the summer because that's typically about what you get. But, chances are, there's one or two folks that are going to have a decision that they need to make and they're looking for help. So, that's what we did. And, out of the two people that inquired, one of them kind of met our minimum and was a good fit and, became a client. But it made it totally worth it when, if you pick up a client that we're managing, 2 to 3 million for, that's a great thing. So.
Yeah, that is great. So you felt like, from an experience standpoint, the online environment was still had a good way of converting, to the lab or the one-on-ones, and still a good process for converting to clients.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, because I do the retirement planning today class. There's going to be a certain amount of folks on the session that again have this decision to make at some point in the near future, maybe this year, maybe in the next couple of years, and they want to address those. So it feels like, I will tell you, it feels different. It doesn't feel the same because a lot of times you don't hear their responses. Sometimes they mute themselves, things like that. Sometimes they go audio only. And so that's a little bit different. And plus too, with this being the first run for us, we have kind of updated our email that we'll send the attendees. So just having very clear instructions on how to install Zoom, test Zoom, even having something in there like, hey, if you haven't used Zoom before, please try this out with a friend ahead of this to make your experience better. And those like little things that, that you have to do because, ideally you want people to be on and not, be able to connect, avoid those technical difficulties. So we really have clear, step-by-step instructions on what to do. We also have some tips too for the fall about, do not unmute yourself. The instructor will mute during the sections. He'll unmute you after the section is over to open up for questions. So we're trying to do things like that so people are a little bit more engaged. And I even have a little note in there about, please keep in mind that if you multitask, you could be a distraction to other attendees. So we're going to give that a roll and see how that works. But it's worded in a way that I think is gentle, but also too making people aware of, this is different. It's a completely different scenario. So to help people be aware of like, hey, you're in a video conference with, maybe 20 other people. So I think, and that's kind of been my experience too with doing Zoom video conference meetings for our clients, right? Because we're doing planning and progress meetings remotely. And, people that use Zoom, they're kind of acclimating it to it quickly through work, but those that aren't, I think they're happy to hear kind of what best practices are. So
sure. That's great. That's great that you're actually adding value in a way that you probably didn't know you would be. So do you find that I don't know if you did one-on-ones live and in person, or if you did the one-on-ones online, virtually on Zoom? What was your scenario or situation?
So when we did the one-on-one meetings after the class? Yeah, so that was all through Zoom too. So yeah, and we're, I really feel like I'm able to connect with people through Zoom and have an effective conversation. And, if for example, if we're meeting with a husband and wife, let's say, and let's say one of them is kind of like half off screen, I'll just say, hey, I can't, see you, Susan. Can you sneak in? Can you get into the frame? I'd like to, be able to see you when I talk. And people they don't mind, but some gentle, I don't want to call them redirects, but it's all part of it. So
That's cool. And then what about the becoming a client? Was that all done on Zoom as well?
Yeah. So we're working remotely. So we made this decision that, we're going to work remotely through the end of the year, barring any significant changes, right? If for some reason it all of a sudden becomes okay to go back to work, or the risks are lower, then we'll reconsider. But yeah, we're doing everything through Zoom. And I feel like that kind of gets back to the quality of the presentation you're giving, like having some really good case examples, maybe having some other things that you've prepared to illustrate the information in the Retirement Planning Today course book. So obviously I use a Retirement Planning Today course book, but I'll have some illustrations that I've created that illustrate that information, or maybe show the value of Roth conversions or things like that, or, showing what a Social Security maximization analysis looks like. And I think that's the key, really to, giving a good class, good experience, really educating them in their best interests. And, as simple as it sounds, if they like me, great. If they don't, that's okay. So.
And then what is and then are you continuing to market to the people that either came to a one-on-one but didn't become a client, or maybe they didn't sign up for a one-on-one? Do you continue to market to those people?
Yeah, I think that's another, really important, piece of this is that, marketing to past attendees who didn't take you up on that, or even letting, we have a lot of existing clients that, because I've been doing this for 10 years. I have a lot of existing clients that attended my class in the past. So we let them know, hey, we have a class coming up. If there's somebody that that's facing a decision whether they want to retire, you can let them know about the class. Here's the brochure that you can share with them, or here's a link to the college's website to register. So letting your existing clients know about it, I think is important. So letting those clients know that came to the class, I think it's a great way for somebody to make an introduction in a low pressure way.
Yeah, that's great. So, well, I want to thank you again, but as we close, is there anything that you would, like to share that you think would be, valuable to other advisors in our network that that you did on your online class, or that you're preparing to do on your next online class, that you think might be interesting or valuable to them?
Boy, I think I talked about the big ones. Yeah, I think for me, I think it kind of came down to just jumping in and knowing that we're kind of jumping into a different situation, and making the most of it, and kind of thinking outside the box and making some adjustments. And, but again, there's people out there that need quality information. And if you give them really good quality information, I think that's a great thing. And a good portion of them will become clients. Not all of them will, but a good, I think there's just a huge need. I can't stress that enough. There are so many like sales presentations, like dinner workshops, which aren't happening now, but there's really a big need for quality educational information. And, there's a good amount of people out there that know that it's kind of complicated to do this and they don't want to do it on their own. So I think just kind of keeping that focus of just doing what's right for them and providing, quality information, I think will lead to good results.
That's great. Thank you for sharing, Mark. I'm sorry, Tony. And really appreciate you sharing, one, and then two, really appreciate your partnership. We greatly appreciate it. As always, let us know what we can do to support you, right? Ongoing, either near term or long term.
That's awesome. It's great how you guys jumped on this opportunity as well with the digital books and jumping into things. So that's been great too. So that's really refreshing. So I appreciate the partnership as well.